So welcome to our second workshop for the research project. We're going to be going over, how do I progress my slides? Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Did it go forward? Raquel? Yep,
Yes.
okay, it did. Thanks, Rudy. All right, so here is our agenda for today. We're going to be going over our ground rules, talking about what the scientific method is, including a DNEP perspective of research, how we draft our research question and hypothesis, discussing what a literature review is. We have some water test kits that could be used for your project if you decide to do something with water, and discussing our new NASEP research guide that I emailed out last week, in addition to feedback for the pre-assignment and just a recap of the workshop. So here are our community norms. So remember to keep focused on our common goal, strive to understand multiple perspectives, be willing to be disturbed and change your mind, critique ideas and concepts, not people, share the space, stay engaged in the work and respect each other's time, recognize when each of us needs space, accept non-closure, and apologize and work to repair damage if you violate a norm. So if you want to just look at one of these norms and take note of how you're going to integrate to how you engage with our work today. So it could be, okay, I'm committing to stay focused, so I'm going to try to not multitask during this time, or I'm going to make sure that I share the space, or that I'm going to look at multiple perspectives when going into this. All right, so can someone help me summarize what we looked at our last workshop? What did we cover? And here are some photos to help you sort of jog your memory on what we talked about last week. You can put it in the chat or you may unmute. What did we talk about last week? Brandon, go ahead, Brandon.
We talked about mostly planning our research project, or not a research project, but just like our actual project. So that would be like environmental stuff and like how it kind of affected or the temperatures and like water, rain, air, something like that, you know? And then you told us the layout of, or like a rough layout of the project. So yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't unmuted. Thank you, Brandon. Yes, we did talk about those things. We talked about over here what the layout for the project looked like. We also looked at the samples of different things. Anybody else want to chime in? So you basically covered everything. What we talked about was that Indigenous people have been scientists and play an important role in research, that every area of subjects has their own version of research. So by participating in this project, it will be an impactful learning experience for you. As Brandon said, we saw what sample projects look like and how this can be integrated into your specific project, and also planning to see how this project can impact your community. So we're going to play a game that Sam Enos, I don't know if you remember her from the summer, she helped us on the conference day, calls Go Get 'Em. So in about 2 minutes, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, go around the room and try to find something that describes something you're interested in studying for your research project. So in 2 minutes, go around and grab something. For instance, if I was still like really interested in studying adhesive, I might grab this duct tape here to represent that. Or if I was interested in studying interventions for people not drinking as much sugary sodas, and this is a sugar-free bubbly water. I might grab something like this. So in 2 minutes, go grab something and we'll talk about what you grabbed. Go. Got about a minute and 30 seconds left. Rudy, I just saw your comment in the chat. That the photo was from
I'm
the
just
first.
kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say that was from the
It's from the
first.
biosphere, right?
Yeah, it was like the first group of NASEP participants that did the geoscience project. So
Gotcha.
that was a long time ago, like 10 years ago or more. 1 minute. Okay. Does everyone have something? We're gonna start sharing now. Anybody want to go first? You can also put what you grabbed in the chat if you would like, or you can unmute. What represents what you would like to study?
May I go first?
Yes, you may.
Well, I'm on. Let me just. Can you see me? Is my camera on?
Yes, we see you.
Well, I grabbed my doggy dish bowl because I want my project to be about the water and like with animal health and how there's the health of water not only for humans but for animals because my animals to me are important. So that's my research project I'm thinking of having.
Awesome. Thanks, Cooper. I think that's really interesting. And in the College of Public Health, there's an area called One Health that focuses not only on human health, but animal and environmental health. So it's a emerging area of study. And I think that that's really cool that you selected that. Anybody else?
Is it okay if I go?
Yes.
So what I grabbed is I grabbed my water bottle and my iPad because I wanted to do something with like AI and how AI consumes water and how much like water usage it uses in our community and especially like on the reservation and stuff like that. I thought that would be really cool.
That is. And I know that you're in town, and that was something that was discussed with, I think, Project Blue, um, about them building something here that would involve AI, but I think the community was opposed to it because of the amount of water that it used. So it's an emerging topic and is something that a lot of people are concerned about. Yes, Brandon.
Okay, wait, let me lower my hand. I got my water bottle here because I'm really interested in water. Um, let's see. Well, during the summer after like our NASEP, me and my brother, we went to Horseshoe Lake up in White Mountain. So we looked around the water and it was like a lot more lower than it used to be. Like it's kind of like I don't know what you call it, but it's like lowering the water. The water is lowering. So I just been showing like genuine concern and I want to see how I can like actually help with that. I think it's mostly because of like the rising climate and mostly of that. So I kind of want to like take research and then like indulge in that like answers and like information and stuff. So yeah.
Thanks, Brandon. I think that's really cool that you were able to observe the differences in the environment. And I think that that's something that's really important and part of observational research. So good for you for noticing that. Anybody else?
May I go?
Yes.
Okay. What I am doing is basically I have a pamphlet on invasive wildlife species. And invasive wildlife species in a whole is just you can be meaning plants, you can be meaning bugs, you can be meaning animals. What I'm specifically talking about is plants. Since they're plants from the northeast, from Asia to Europe, they've all around has been really been showing the devastation across multiple reservations. One of the biggest to me is White Mountain. Since there's a fungus going around and it's killing a lot of trees, and if nothing is done about it now, then it can be a huge threat later on.
Wow. I didn't know that. And I'm really interested in learning more about what this fungus is because it can impact food sources, it sounds like maybe, or and I mean here in Tucson, like having coverage for shade and stuff is really important to people because it's so hot. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic. Does it impact like specific types of trees?
Sorry, you kind of cut it out there. Could you say that again?
Does it impact certain types of trees?
Yes, ponderosa trees, pine trees, and it's those trees that elk itself, elk, deer, multiple animals depend on for to just live. And if the elk don't eat, then a lot of our people can't eat, and then it just spirals out of control, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it impacts the whole ecosystem, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Austin. Anybody else want to share?
Can I go?
Yes.
I'm still struggling with what I'm doing. I'm just thinking about either what I did for the pre-assignment with the trash and recycle or with the diabetes in in Native Americans. I'm still thinking with between those.
Thanks, Aiden. Yeah, I wrote both of them down and we can talk about what some options are for looking at either one of them. I remember what you discussed in your pre-assignment, and so either one would be a great topic.
Okay, thank you.
I see Natalie put in the chat that she grabbed a glass cup. She's curious about water quality of both new and old Pascua and how they compare between the older houses built and the newer houses built and the older ones. That's great. I'm gonna write this down too. So it seems like you have your comparison groups already, and that's going to be important for what we're going to be talking about in terms of our methods and things like that. Did somebody else want to talk? Go ahead.
Hey everybody, it's me, Camilla. I'd like to go next.
Great, Camilla, let's go.
All right. Here next to me, I have some gloves. I recently got back from a trip to Shiprock, and I've been helping out my Che collect some coal. And I was wanting to do some more research on the coal usage for water warming and as a stove, and like other alternatives that may be safer and like that that are like accessible to those in the rural areas.
Yeah, energy accessibility is a big concern in tribal areas, and things that use combustion like wood and coal and stuff is not always easy to get, and sometimes it can be impactful to air quality. So I completely
Definitely.
understand. Yeah, why
there's
you would
also
want to be. Go for it.
there's also the usage of HVACs, but even using that is causing pollution within itself.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
it's just hard to find a solution that's like truly good for the planet and like, is accessible.
Mhm. Mhm. Anybody else in the chat? Malia grabbed a loaf of bread because she's curious about the different preservatives in foods and how that differs. Yep, it's it's there's been an increase in preservatives in food, but there's also things like food insecurity. So you want to make things last longer so people don't waste food as much, but we also don't know how those things are impacting our bodies. So it is important to learn about and bring awareness to. Anybody else? And if you're still thinking about it, it's quite all right. That's what we're here to discuss and brainstorm. So for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next, but feel free to put it in the chat if you didn't get to speak yet. All right, so thank you for playing the Go Get 'em game. What we're going to go into next is, what is the scientific method? If you've taken science courses yet, I'm sure that this is going to be a review for you, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're going to discuss this now. So the scientific method is a process for experimentation that is used to explore observations and answer questions. So this may have been presented to you in a different way, but I hope that the definition aligns with what you might have heard before. And it's a whole process that includes figuring out what the background is. For a lot of you, this is what you did with your pre-assignment. You thought about what you know. You might have done some research on something and started to develop what your research topic is by looking in the community, by seeing what's important through things that you have observed, through interactions that you've had with people, or things that you're passionate about yourself. Then you can create this hypothesis of what you think would happen based off of data that's available. You conduct your experiment, you review the results, and then you develop a conclusion on whether your research question and hypothesis was supported or not, and seeing what could be done differently. And there's qualitative research and quantitative research. Who can tell me the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Or maybe give me definitions for them. If you don't know the difference, you can give me the definitions for one of them. Oh, sorry. Anybody have any ideas?
I got quantitative for you. It is data that can be measured through numbers, or how do I put this? Yeah, basically. So if you were wanting to do a test on something that involved, like, I don't know, drops of water, then the quantitative data would be the drops of water, as a random little example.
Yeah, yes, great. So yeah, quantitative, I think of like the quantity. So with numbers, as she said, you can test the volume or differences and things like that. So that does describe quantitative. What about qualitative?
The sky is as big as the ocean. May I answer that?
Yes, Cooper?
Isn't qualitative like it's not in regards of measurements, but more of a correlation to something else? So, like for instance, a cup, you can measure or have it assigned as the cup's blue or the cup's red. So it's connected to a different type of measurement other than like units of numbers.
Yeah, so like the qualities of it, right? So um, great example. You're all sticking with the same theme of water and looking at maybe the color of it. So someone might describe like the the smell or taste or look of it, and that's not necessarily unit driven, but is about the quality. Another thing that is related to qualitative research is, say you want to have like a focus group and you want to talk to people about their experiences regarding water. You develop questions and you ask these people the questions, and then based off of the responses, you look at it and you're like, okay, these are the themes that I'm gathering from what was shared in our focus group. That would be an example of qualitative research. For quantitative, you might give them a survey and say, what's your satisfaction with this, and things like that. So you can compare the differences with number values, or again, it could be like with the water quality test kits that I have behind me, looking at the values of things like the chlorine level, seeing if there's water hardness and different things like that. So that's qualitative and quantitative. And depending on how you format your research question, your hypothesis, that could mean that you're engaging in either qualitative or quantitative research, and that will also impact sort of your methods as well. I want to introduce this Diné research process, and I'm really thankful to Sam Enos, who introduced this to our team. She took classes at Diné College and said that this was developed there. And so as we indigenize our thinking and our research as Indigenous people, it's important to think about how our tribes engage with research and sort of think about the research. And I recognize that not all of us here are Diné, but it's most likely that your tribe has a way of thinking of research as well. And I encourage you to possibly reach out to the tribal colleges that are in your area. They are likely to help you discover sort of some of these ways of thinking, and TCUs are a great place that integrate culture into academics. So just to give a shout out to our tribal colleges and universities. But as you see here, in that same way, this research is a circle, and the top here, where it says thinking, it looks like it's supposed to be north. I know that this is not generally the way that we look at things in terms of directionality, but this is sort of the east area where we're thinking about. So, and in Navajo, this is Nitsahakes, so thinking. And so this stage, you'd be formulating your research question, doing your literature review, developing your causation model, and formulating your hypothesis, considering data requirements, and if it's something that's feasible to do. So we're all in this sort of thinking stage at this moment, thinking about what our topic is, how we want to ask what we're going to do, and what might be important to us. The next stage here is the planning stage. So this would be when we think about our methods, doing our research design, how many samples, what we want to sample, what tools we need, and if we need to look at having an internal IRB, internal review board, look at what our methods are. And I believe it's pronounced Nahata. And the third area here is life, so carrying out this plan. So figuring out what our samples are, collecting data, and putting this data into our models, and analyzing things. So also figuring out how we want to present this data to the community. Is it through graphs, charts, tables, numbers, themes? And in Diné-Bizaad, life is Ina. And afterwards, we move into the next area, which includes like reflection. And so here it's the assurance phase. So we're drawing conclusions based off of what we observed, how confident we are in our findings, sharing that, sharing limitations, reevaluating what we can do in the future, and making recommendations and what are the implications of what we found. And I believe it's pronounced Sehasin. So this is another way to view research through an Indigenous perspective. And there's a lot of different ways that the scientific method flow chart is represented. So here are some other examples here, and they're all very useful. So Indigenous research, again, as a reminder, it's a radical act of resistance against all that has oppressed us. And many times it's done for the love of our people. And it also recognizes that Indigenous people have always been scientists. And this was drawn from the Urban Indian Dictionary definitions by Abigail Echohawk, who is from the Pawnee Nation. So we're going to be going into further of that first phase of our research project, which includes our research question. So a lot of the feedback that I gave to folks who submitted their pre-assignment was, how are you going to develop this topic into a research question? So some ways that you can do this is you can frame the problem in the form of a question that can be investigated. You can propose an explanation for the problem you are investigating. I don't know why the G's hanging there. And also describe an experiment you could perform that would test the explanation. So some examples of how you would form this research question is, how has the role of your topic changed over the past 50 years, or like a time frame? What are the effects of the topic on topic? How did the topic impact the lives of topic in the topic? Sorry, a lot of these are fill in the blanks, but I hope that it's giving you some ideas of how you can just formulate your research question. And how can this topic change over the past, how has this topic changed over the past century, and what has influenced those changes? So some examples. Who has heard of a hypothesis before? Here it says involves a meaningful question and educated prediction of what will happen in an experiment, but who can tell me what a hypothesis is in their own words? Aiden has heard of a hypothesis.
May I?
Yes.
A hypothesis is a conclusion based on, basically you say this, if I do this and this should do this. Basically, you're saying something, but you haven't tested it yet until that's where the experimentation part comes in. And then it goes hypothesis, experimentation, and then I can't remember the last one. I forgot.
No, you were on a roll, and I think that you had it there. So yeah, you're basically making an educated guess on what you think is going to happen, and what you think the result is and why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else want to chime in? All right. Thank you for sharing. So important things to also reflect on when developing the hypothesis is, who else wants to know? What do I want to know? And what does this mean? What does this question mean to me? So let me see, how far are we from our example? So we are going to talk about this in upcoming slides, so I'll get to those slides. When we're thinking of our research question and also our hypothesis, it's also important to keep in mind SMART goals. Has anyone heard of SMART goals before? I hear about these SMART goals too in my classes as I'm working on my dissertation. So they're here on the screen. So if you haven't heard of SMART goals before, the S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for realistic, and T stands for time bound. So this is also important when just making any sort of goals. If you want to meet a personal goal, it doesn't have to be like a research goal, but these are details that you would want to add into your goal, because if you just say, well, I want to learn how to speak my traditional language, that's my goal. That's great, but to make it an even better goal would be to say, I want to do this by the end of the year. So that made it more specific. It made it more time bound. I don't know if that includes the measurable portion yet, but I think it's something that's achievable, maybe. Maybe adding 2 years to it, I'm not sure. But just being more specific and detailed in these goals is important, because it also applies to your research question. When people are reading your project, they want to know these fine details so that it's clear to them. And it also helps you with the other parts that you're going to be preparing, including your methods and things like that. So when you're developing your hypothesis, start with asking a research question. So we discussed how to sort of start off with a research question. Do preliminary research and make a direct observation. Identify the problem or phenomena, so thing or event of interest among your community. Consider what you want to test. Choose a variable you think will impact the community environment, and also observe the variables that occur that possibly contribute to the problem. Any questions so far? So when drafting your hypothesis, you can start with an if-then statement. So let's see. People talked about, so I'm going to use Austin's example of the plants and the fungus. So if we were having if we wanted to form this into an if-then statement, how would we do that? Let's see. Feel free to chime in too. So if our research question is, how can we prevent this tree fungus from spreading to other trees? That's going to be our research question. Our hypothesis could be, if, and I don't know anything about this topic, so just putting this out there, but for the purposes of our example, we might say, if we utilize this preventative agent to prevent this fungus from spreading, then we will see fewer trees die. That's very that's very general, but that could be how you phrase a hypothesis. Does anyone have a better example of that? Are we okay?
I was thinking something very similar to what you said, Carol. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like I would see locally that sometimes people would paint the bottom of trees like white for some reason. And I don't know if that somehow kind of, again, I don't know if it was paint or if it was some kind of treatment that would kind of help the tree kind of be protected from some type of insect. So just comes to mind as a possibility.
Thanks, Rudy. I didn't know that they did that. That's great. And I forgot that the insect was the vector for spreading some of that fungus. So thank you. That is helpful. So if you can just take a moment to think about what you would say for your hypothesis. If you're not certain what your topic is, then just pick something, and that can be your hypothetical topic for the purposes of just thinking. So just take a moment to think what your possible hypothesis could be. Another way to say this, if the if then doesn't work, you can say I hypothesize. That might be helpful. So the example used here, I hypothesize that the planting of more native plants will lessen the arsenic impacts to the soil in Saurita suburban areas. Great, okay. Does anyone have a hypothesis that they want to share based off of the research topic that they selected or are thinking about selecting?
I can throw an example for the one that we just did about the tree fungus.
Yes.
If anyone's looking to maybe pull something from it, but from one thing I got was using the if statement. So if trees are infected by fungus, then their growth will decrease, maybe because of the fungus damages their roots, the barks, or even the leaves that prevents them from getting enough nutrients locally.
Yes, thank you. That's great. Anybody else? I think I might have shared that I am doing my dissertation on breast cancer screening. And so one of the things that I'm looking at is the distance that people have to travel to get a mammography. And so my hypothesis is if individuals have to travel a farther distance to receive a mammogram, then they're more likely not going to have as high breast cancer screening rates than people who travel a lesser distance. So that's the general hypothesis. Things that I know that I have to reflect on and work on when figuring out what those things mean when I measure it is what is a farther distance? What is a shorter distance? I have to figure out the variables that I'm comparing, but at least I have the general idea of what it is that I'm asking, what I think will happen. And so, yeah, just sharing some things that I'm doing personally. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of a brainstorming activity. The question here is how can off-grid housing on the reservation utilize renewable energy sources? That's the question here. How can off-grid housing on the reservation utilize renewable energy sources? Another follow-up question is solar or wind energy more efficient? So they're trying to determine here which one is better. So questions posed to you all is, why would this research in question be relevant or of interest to you? I know that for some people, they did do their pre-assignment based off of energy accessibility, specifically in rural areas, because it might be limited to some folks. And so the next question for this is, how would you collect the data for this project? So how might somebody determine if solar or wind energy is more efficient? How would you make this comparison? And how could you analyze the data that you collect? So the first question that we'll review is, why would this research in question be relevant or of interest to you? Is this something that anybody selected for their research topic? Anybody? Let me look at my list. Sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat. I need to look at it. So Camille said that when I asked about a hypothesis, great, you said it would be an educated guess towards something. Aiden talked about the latex. Oh, great. Okay. So I'll share why this research might be interesting. So I know that in Arizona, there is a lot of solar companies, and we get approached a lot about putting solar panels on our roofs and stuff because we get a lot of sun, right? But it could be possible that maybe wind energy is more cost effective, maybe. So this could be a reason why this research is relevant to me as a homeowner, because I would be paying for the electricity costs, you know? And when I kind of said it a little bit in terms of why this would be relevant to me, but what is one way that we can compare whether something is more energy efficient? Or at least me as a homeowner, what might I look at to know, oh, I think this is better because of this or that? Might it have to do with cost, right? I could compare costs.
I think for one, I think we could say costs. And then plus with the solar panels, I know you got to get the maintenance like after several hours of energy has conserved. Because back on the reservation there, they actually have a solar plant down at Red Mesa, and I have a buddy that works there, and he said it takes quite a time and takes sufficient money to get those solar panels up and going. So I think ideally on the reservation, I think cost efficient would play a really big factor in having these installed and something and take into consideration not many of our elderly are able to receive that kind of funding. So that will play a really big major role as well. Just to throw some ideas out there.
Yeah, maintenance too, right? That's a great point. Camille?
I feel like, I don't know, I feel like solar panels have their pros and cons, but I think they would have its cons for being in Arizona, since like Arizona is so hot throughout like the entire year. So like electricity would like never be an issue throughout the entire year, because I'm pretty sure 2025 was going to be one of the hottest like years like to record. So maybe it would be beneficial to have like solar instead of using the Tucson like power.
Yeah, we do have an abundance of sun here. So going back to the point here of background data, we do have a lot of sun, but do we have a lot of wind? I don't know if we have a lot of wind. That would be an important thing to look up and maybe see, based off the amount of sunlight we get, how much energy usage is generated through solar energy versus wind. How much potential do we have for energy production for wind? There's places like when you drive to California, it starts to get really skinny towards this, I don't even know the name of the area, but you can see the wind turbines there, and that makes sense because it's very windy there, you know? So, but I don't know if we experience that much here in Tucson or your area. So having information about the geography could be important as well. Great. So how would we analyze it? I liked how Camille talked about doing like pros and cons. That could be a way of analyzing the data. In the pros, it could be talking about how much it costs. As Raquel talked about, it could be talking about the maintenance and also maybe the startup of having something that's wind or solar. Anything else that we could look at? What kind of data we can collect? We might have covered everything. So in this brainstorming activity, you can also reflect and think about how you might do something like this for your research topic. So you have the theme, you have a general idea of things, but you might want to think about how this is relevant to you. What sort of data can you collect to determine what the outcome is for your research topic, and how will you analyze the data you collect? So for some examples, someone said that they were interested in proper disposal of trash, right? So they have a topic, that's great. So what is the research question that they could ask with that? They could say, I want to see if people receive education about proper trash disposal, if this will impact their future trash disposal. So that's their research question. But thinking back to these questions here is, how are they going to collect that data? Are they going to have people write a journal? Are they going to have people do like a survey, a pre-survey to say like, this is what I would do before I received information about proper trash disposal, and these are responses to what after I received this information to what I'm doing now? Are they going to compare the pre and post test? And that's how they're going to analyze what the outcome is. There's some other people who have expressed that they're interested in water. That's great. Water is a great topic. But how are you going to determine what data you're going to collect? Are you doing something that's a comparison type, like I think, was it Malia or Natalie? Whoever was who was interested in the sites of Old Pascua and New Pascua. So you already have your sample areas that you're thinking of. So are you going to collect 2 or 3 water samples from areas in Old Pascua and then compare them to New Pascua? What are your parameters that you're going to look at? Are you going to look at chlorine, bacteria, water hardness? So think about those variables. You can basically do all of the variables that are included in the water test kit if that's what you decide to use. And so looking at that data and making comparisons, you could do a graph, you could do a table to show what the differences are with the outcomes of those samples. So that's how you would analyze that data. So as we've as we continue with our exploration of our topics, start thinking about what your specific research question is and how you're going to test it. That's going to be very important. So to go a little bit further here, if you're not certain about what you want to do for your hypothesis, you have your topic selected, but you're not certain about what your hypothesis is, or you might not be certain about what your topic is, you could do a brief literature review. Has anyone heard of a literature review before? Anybody heard of a literature review? Sorry, there's so much text on this page here. Let me see if I can. So it's okay if you haven't heard of a literature review before. Oh, it's not highlighting the way I would like it to. So I heard about a literature review once I got into college. So it's an important tool to sort of figure out the background information for a topic that you're selecting. And oftentimes that's the starting point for folks to do research on what their topic is. And the important part for this is to look at primary scholarly resources versus popular sources. So can someone give me an example of a popular resource? A popular resource. What about,
An
oh, go
example
ahead.
of a popular resource could be the obvious one, Google. We all use it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, going on your search engine and finding something on Google is definitely one of the most popular sources, right? So on the other side of that, what could be considered the primary scholarly source for Google? It's on the slide. It's hidden in all the text that's here, but it's under the resources on this side. Oh, sorry, going back. So it's Google Scholar. So instead of using just the general tool of Google, you could go onto Google Scholar. You can go to your library and look up different things. And so here's some example of popular versus scholarly resources. So popular things could be magazines and things that rarely give full citations. It's written for the general public. On the other side, scholarly sources are usually done and published in different journals, books, and things like that. It uses scholarly languages and offers a full citation. The big thing is that it's peer reviewed, which means that it's looked by people who are trained in this specific area. They look through it and they sort of validate what was found in there and say, this is good, we can release this to everyone for review and sort of give that stamp of approval. So because it's peer reviewed, it's sort of more trusted in that sense to use as a resource, you know. Has anyone ever fallen into the instance where you've watched something online and then you're like, oh, I heard this from TikTok or something like that? And sometimes I have to remember, okay, maybe I need to check my sources and make sure that that is an actual factual thing that I learned and wasn't just something that was an opinion or stated, you know. That's another example of a difference between learning something from a popular source like TikTok or social media versus something that's peer reviewed. So here are some other examples. Popular journals. Let's see. I think one of the main things that I use when looking at scholarly journals here, which are, I put them very close together. There should be a division here, but these are popular journals, so like Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, different things like that, versus scholarly journals. The ones that I use most often in public health is like PubMed. And something I want to note is if you are looking at things like Google Scholar and you don't have access because it's behind a paywall of some sort, they say you have to subscribe or you have to pay this amount to receive the journal article. Let me know. The University of Arizona has access to a lot of these as part of our tuition, so I'd be happy to share the article that you're looking for. Please do not pay for any sort of articles that are behind a paywall. Please ask us first. We also have Nico, who you all remember from the summer. He works at the library, and I know that I've asked him a few times when I've wanted to access journals that I wasn't able to get for some reason. He was able to obtain it for me. So we have lots of resources here to help you on your investigative journey. These are also important for your references, which is important for your research project. It's a required area for your project. It's generally at the end. And so keep track of where you're finding the information that you're looking at, either in your pre-assignment. I saw a lot of you had lovely resources and references at the end. There's also something free that you might not need right now, but something that you might be interested in as you get to college. There's different citation programs, and there's one that's free. I think it's called Zotero, where you can just upload resources, and it creates a nice bibliography for you, and you can do in paragraph citations as well. It's really helpful. So there's a lot of different citation styles. I believe for the research project, as long as you select one and you stick with it, that will be good for use. So there's MLA, APA, Chicago, and more. If you want to get fancy, there's specific citation styles that different groups like to use. So for public health, for medical type things, we like to use the American Medical Association, but for the American Chemical Society, they might choose something else.
Well,
Yes.
for those different citation styles, as you've kind of worked with students on applying to the science fairs, it doesn't sound like that there's a preference for one over the other, but I just thought I'd ask that question.
Yeah, I don't think that there is one specifically. I'll
Mhm.
check. It's just sort of like you choose one, so
Okay.
I'll look to see. But they do heavily want references. Even if you're if you choose a photo that you find online, they want you to have a citation for that photo. So I encourage you all to take as many original photos of your work as you can, to try to not have to go back and cite as many things, but sometimes that's what you got to do. And I will check to see whether or not there's a specific reference style that's needed. Thanks, Rudy. Let me write that down. All right, so if you're not certain at this point what your hypothesis, your topic, or research question is, I encourage you to do a mini literature review. So choose between 3 to 5 scholarly resources. Go on Google Scholar and read 3 to 5 articles that relate to your topic. And by reading and figuring out what literature is available, you might be able to say after that, based off of what I've learned, I think that this is a good topic, or based off of what I've learned on this topic, now I think that this will be the outcome based off of what I choose to do. If I decide to treat the water in a certain way, I think that it's going to have this sort of outcome, or it can be something that's useful for your background if you already have your topic. And with the research project, you're going to have like a introduction of sorts. And so this included with your pre-assignment can be part of that introduction, that background. It's not something that you have to turn in, but if you're struggling with deciding what your research topic or hypothesis research question is, then I encourage you to look at some scholarly sources to sort of figure that out. And if you need help, I do this a lot in doctoral work, so I'm happy to help in any way. So with that, our goal is to have you have your research hypothesis and purpose submitted by October 17th, which is in a few days, but we can certainly extend that if you need some more time. And I'll go back to the research, the water quality test kits, but you may be thinking, okay, so you want us to submit this research question, hypothesis, and purpose. Where do we submit that to? So last week I sent out this NASEP research guide. So this is the PDF form of it here, and everyone that received feedback on their pre-assignments, I also sent you the link as well. So what you're going to first do is go here and decide how you want to engage with this project. Do you have access to Google Slides? If you have a Gmail, you likely have access to Google Slides. If you use Microsoft, you can use Microsoft PowerPoint. If you have an iCloud, and you all have iPads, so maybe it's best to use iCloud Keynote. You can select one of these platforms here, because with this project guide, it's going to take you through a presentation that has instructions, dates, and things like that. So when you click on these links here, it's going to open up the presentation. So for instance, if I open up Microsoft PowerPoint here, it's going to say, this is the NASEP research project guide. What you're going to want to do now is, actually your view is going to look a little bit different because I'm signed in, but what you're generally going to do is go to File here, and once you go to File, it's going to say Download Copy. It's taking a moment to load, so I'm not going to be able to show you. So you'll do File, Download Copy, and after you have the file downloaded, the next thing I'm going to want you to do is you're going to want to share this document with me and also with Sophia. So you're going to go here, you're going to go to share. It is still loading, and then we'll play pretend here that it's finished loading. There should be a dialog window that opens up that says, who do you want to share with? So what you're going to do is put my email in, you're going to put Sophia's email in, and then we'll have access. So this will sort of be your home base for where you will have your different things uploaded and managed here. Let's see. Oh yeah, so click here. Going to add everybody's names, and then I'll have a copy. It's the same mechanism for Google Slides. It's going to say make a copy, makes a copy, I'm going to go to my next page here. I'm going to share with Carol. Yep, and then I'll have a copy. So as we look through this, it has all of the different science fairs that I'm aware of here. So regional science fairs and state science fairs. One of the questions that we had in the first workshop was, when are the science fairs? There is a Four Corners Regional Science and Engineering Fair. If it has this little approximation symbol, that means that they haven't announced to the public when the science fair deadlines are or specifically will be. So that's why this symbol is here. That's my guesstimation based off of when they've had it in previous years. So Four Corners, their registration deadline is likely going to be between February 1st to 14th. The Denver Metro Regional Science Fair is likely going to be due at the end of January. SARCEF doesn't have this estimation. Their actual deadline is going to be February 22nd. So to keep in mind these deadlines when you're working on your project. And with the deadlines that we have in this research project guide, it'll have you finished with your science project by January. So if you were wanting to participate in this Denver fair or the Four Corners and things, then you'll be on track to completing your science fair by then. Something that is not included in here, and I encourage you to ask at your school, is when are your school science fairs? Does anyone know if their school is having a science fair? Or like a showcase? We're still in October, so most schools don't have their science fairs until winter, so it's okay if you don't know, but I encourage you to ask because I heard someone, go ahead.
Carol, for
Yes.
my school district in Gallup, I believe we do have a science fair this come January or February, and it's within the whole county. So I believe we do have a science fair.
Great. It's good that you're aware of it. I encourage you to ask when it might be, because if it's in January, our deadlines might be right around the same time. So you might have to speed up your project a little bit more if their deadline is a little bit sooner. So thank you for letting me know. And yeah, just something for folks to keep in mind. Go ahead, Aiden.
With my school, what do you call it? It's kind of different each year because sometimes it'll be in the beginning of the year or towards the end of the year.
Okay. So a little bit more time, right?
Yeah.
Great. But if you want to do any of these regional fairs, then you'll still be on track if you follow the guidelines here. But if you decide that you just want to do your schools, then you might have more time. So good to know.
Okay, thank you.
For the state science fairs, some of the state science fairs require that you participate in your school or regional fair before signing up for a state science fair. It depends. I know that NASEP doesn't have that requirement, but these are the deadlines for the state fairs. If a fair in your state isn't listed and you're like, I know that I want to participate in this other fair, a great website to look at other fairs is the findafair.societyforscience.org. They have a tool to look up a bunch of different things. So the next step here would be, what fairs do you plan to participate? If you let us know what ones you want to participate in. That will help us because we'll put you on the list to for us to remember. And also there are forms that have to be uploaded for participation in these different fairs. It also requires most times having an online login and questionnaire. Sophia helps a lot with that. So it'll help me and Sophia know which fairs you're going to sign up for so we can start creating those online logins for you and really helping you sign up for those fairs. That's one big thing we do with NASEP is also helping you with the registration process because it can be a lot to undertake sometimes. Next thing to do is here, input what your research question is. And it's okay if it's a draft because as with your pre-assignments, I provided feedback on things to consider and think about. And so even in this workshop, when I was trying to think of a research question and a hypothesis off the fly, I didn't get it perfectly, but that's okay because this is all a learning process. But this is where you would insert your research question here, where it says insert here for the box, the same for your hypothesis, and also your purpose statement. So for an example here, I want to know if breast cancer screening rates differ between rural and urban communities. That could be what I put here for my research. Actually, that's more formatted for a research purpose. So for a research question, it could be, what are the differences between breast cancer screening rates for rural and urban communities? My hypothesis, I think that individuals who are from rural areas will have lower breast cancer screening rates because they have to travel a farther distance than individuals in urban areas. That could be my hypothesis. And then for my purpose, the purpose of my project is to investigate the differences in breast cancer screening rates by rural and urban locations. That's what I would put down here. Any questions about that so far? No? Okay, I'll continue then. This will be relevant in our next workshop session. And if you downloaded the research guide before today, I did change the deadline for the materials, methods, and checklist so that it aligned more with our next workshop because we hadn't really discussed this information before. So I think the original deadline was October 20th or something. So I've extended the deadline for this, but once we get to the materials, this is where you'll put your information for materials, your methods and procedures. We talked about the IRB, the Internal Review Board, doing this rules and wizard survey will help you determine if your procedure needs internal review board approval. SARCEF does the internal review board process here, so we can help you get approval for your research process. Here asks you what forms you need so that we can help you fill out your forms. So everything that you need to progress in your research project is here, and we can go over it in more detail as some of those things arise, but this is what I wanted to show you as a helpful tool to help you progress. Any questions? So just to reiterate this, this project here aligns with this research project guide. This is just a document version of that slide. So we just reviewed the science fair lookup that was here. That was on one of the PowerPoint slides. This block here was everything due October 17th. If you need an extension, that's fine. but that includes the research question, hypothesis, and purpose, including the deadline here. This block here, briefly discussed earlier, was the materials, methods, and procedure due November 3rd. Here are some other due dates and things here, but again, we'll discuss them as those deadlines get closer. And then I want to go back to the PowerPoint. 1 second. Any questions? So here are our upcoming deadlines. So create your shared presentation that you're going to be engaging with us for your research project, either in Google Slides, Microsoft, or Keynote, and start to enter in what your science fair selection is, what's your research question, hypothesis, and purpose. As a reminder, our next workshop is going to be on October 28th. On November 3rd is when we'll have our materials, methods, and procedures and forms check. On November 10th is when folks should start to conduct their experiment, with the hopes that you'll start to finish up your experiment conduction at the end of November, because we're going to want your results in December. December 22nd, you'll start writing your conclusion and having your draft for your project presentation. We'll give you feedback. You'll do another round of edits. And then by January 26th, we hope that you'll have your final draft of your project, and we'll start preparing you on how to do your oral presentation for your project. And within that, every 2 weeks, we're going to be having our meetings like this, so that if you have any questions, that you'll have space to do that. And as we progress, we'll have less sort of lecture type things and more breakout room things, so that you can sort of fluff out different parts of your project and have individual time to discuss those things if needed. So here's a summary of what we covered. We covered SMART goals and developing a research question, as well as a hypothesis. Oh, I did not talk about the water quality test kits, so let me go back momentarily. So the Tanatam Water Resource Department provided us with these water quality test kits. So all of those who are interested in doing their project related to water can use these kits, and there's a variety of things that are covered within the different indicators that can be tested, including bacteria, water hardness, chlorine, nitrates, nitrites, copper, I believe. So a lot of different things to indicate for water quality. And if you do receive one of these, it's important to use gloves. I think we can provide some of those so that you can make sure that you're safe. For some of you, I think for Dennis said he was interested in looking at things with uranium. There is a way to get uranium samples tested in water, but it's not included in this water safe test kit. So that's why it's important when developing your methods to figure out what tools you need in order to test whatever it is that you want to test. And so this would be useful for general water quality indicators, but if you need something a little bit more specific, then that will have to be written into your methods. Again, take pictures from your results. When using this, it'll help save you for having to write a bunch of citations for other images, but it can also be used for your results too, to make comparisons for the look of things and whatnot, in like terms of color and whatnot. So everyone can have access to these water quality test kits if they would like, because we have enough for everyone. Okay. Oh, I went too far through the slides. 1 second, let me share my screen again. Okay. We're at the tail end, so I believe one of the last things is just sort of questions and a reminder slide for when our next workshop is. Yep, so summary here. Our next workshop is going to be on Tuesday, October 28th. And I really liked Sam's presentations that she did when she was here because she would include a quote from an Indigenous person. And so the quote that she had selected for this presentation a few years ago was, "We have one Earth, let's take care of it." And this was a quote from Deb Holland. Any questions? We'll be on here for a few moments. All right, I did get a question. On the science fair selection, research question, hypothesis, and purpose, is it possible to get the deadline pushed to next week? Absolutely, yes. Thank you for asking. Anybody else? If anybody else needs an extension, please send me an email or a message on Slack. Memphis, did you have a question? I saw a hand raised. No? Okay. And for everyone who submitted their pre-assignment, I did submit feedback to you all. I think you all did a fantastic job, and my questions were mainly follow-up questions related to the content of today's presentation. So how are you going to format this into a research question? What do you think is going to happen based off of that? And how will you test whatever question you're asking? So I think you all did a great job. And if you still want to submit your pre-assignment for review, feel free. We're accepting them throughout this entire time period. Yes. Camille, I saw your note. Yes, we'll have, I'll be on to ask or answer any questions that you might have. All right, everybody, if you don't have any questions, feel free to hop off. I'll be on to answer other questions if you do have questions. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming.
Have a good evening.
See you later. Bye.
Have a good evening, Carol.
Thank you, you too.